Good evening, ladies, menfolk, and non-binary viewers, to episode 86 of Word Ninjas Live. I am your host, Charles, your weekly instigator of literary and creative productivity and insanity, a little bit of everything. Joining me tonight are Will,
Hello.
Justin,
Indeed.
and Calvin.
Mm-hmm.
Unlike last week, we're actually going to talk about literary things. We've had our week of fun. It's time to get back into it. And starting things off this week is the talkie point. Are there series or standalone novels that have too much unresolved plot points? Or too many? How do you handle all your plot threads when writing? I brought this one up because I finished the trilogy from Laini Taylor, which is A Daughter of Smoke and Bone. I forget the second one, and then A Dream of God and Monsters. And so many plot points that have been left unresolved. I want resolution, damn it. But then I thought of all the various subplots that I do in my own stories. At least I have the excuse of not having finished any of my stories yet. But I was kind of curious how other people handle them in their own writing, or how they've seen them in other works. Are subplots generally taken care of in things that you have read, or are there some questions left unanswered?
Most of the ones I've read have been pretty good at summing up plots, and when they don't, it's only because there's more to come. So I guess maybe I've been lucky with that when it comes to reading. I can't think of anything that had subplots that were unresolved.
What about open-ended interpretations of the endings? Is that considered an untied subplot?
Depends on how well it's done. If there are ways that you can easily interpret the ending one way or another, then I think it's okay. But if no one really knows what's going on, I feel like it could be done better. Or at least that's what I would think if I were to read something like that. I feel like that would fall under horror or psychological stories primarily.
Shocking that I would bring it up then. Trying to think of...
I can think of a manga that I read that felt like it had unresolved plots that annoyed me. But then they kind of, I think they made a continuation series that might have summed it up that I haven't read yet, so.
I was just mainly intrigued because this trilogy that I finished had a lot of really good subplots to it, but they didn't really get resolved. Stuff like, oh, this character seems to be relatively unkillable because they're the descendant of someone very powerful, blah-de-blah. But then the character literally is unkillable. Someone throws a knife at him, and the knife goes through him. And it's never explained.
Oh.
There are ways you could think about how it was solved, but it's never clearly said. Which is disappointing. Because normally if you throw a knife at someone and it goes through them, that's something worth talking about.
Do you extend the hatred of open-ending or currently unresolved subplots in the TV world as well? Because I feel like that in and of itself drives most shows, is having overlapping unresolved subplots that bring people back.
That's more acceptable because it's implied that they will eventually be resolved, so long as the television show is not canceled prematurely. Fox. Or UPN, back when it was around, really.
I feel like that would only apply when you get to the series finale and you're still going, but wait, what about this?
Sliders.
Firefly?
Wait,
That
I
one
haven't
actually.
finished the Slider series. Did it
Oh,
also leave it very open-ended? Because now I'm upset because I've been watching them.
where are you in the Sliders series?
Uh, None of the main characters have left yet, so I'm still pretty early on.
Oh,
I'm aware that almost everyone leaves before the end of the series.
has a significant event happened to the professor yet?
No, I heard that happens, and
Okay,
that has not happened yet.
then you are pretty early on.
Yes, I think
Um,
I'm only 2 seasons in.
yeah, and there's like 8 or 9.
Yeah,
I want to say.
I'm
Yeah,
aware bad things happen, but I thought maybe they'd all be resolved, like not
no,
open-ended.
no.
Oh no!
The final episode, I won't spoil anything for you. I'll be good about that.
All
The
right.
final episode has one very clearly unresolved issue between the main character and where he is at that point. You get no resolution that I've seen. Maybe I misinterpreted.
Mm.
And a multi-seasonal story arc is left open-ended. You don't
Oh.
I don't see how it ends. They might have done something since then that I just haven't seen. I don't know. But back in the day, I was very upset when I saw that ending.
Well, I'm looking forward to being miserable very eventually.
I'm hoping that series like that pulled something like what Farscape did, where the series finale drove everyone nuts because it became open-ended at the very last 30 seconds of the series because 2 characters died after saving the universe and all that stuff. They just got disintegrated in a boat. But then they did a miniseries to follow up all the various little plot points left over a couple of years later.
I feel like there's a lot of shows that I tell people stop watching after this episode because this is a perfectly fine ending. Do not, under any circumstance, keep watching. The last season of Scrubs comes to mind,
Mm,
although that wasn't really a loose ending situation. That was sort of a dear God, why situation. Um, Not reading the last couple pages of the Dark Tower series is recommended by
I never
Stephen
did
King
finish that
himself.
one. I've gotten through the first 4 books or so, and then it went really weird, and I couldn't get the next book because the library was being silly.
I have all of them, so. But you cannot borrow them until you finish a book.
I finished 3 books. I finished a whole trilogy.
And then you can borrow 3 of my books. I didn't see the last. I watched Star Trek Next Generation sort of in the moment, whatever episode happened to be on TV.
As most people do.
So I don't really know how the overall arc ended. I don't know if they ever made it to Earth again. And then there were movies that came after the series, so everything.
Are we
weird.
talking Next Generation or one of the other Star Trek series?
I was originally talking about Next Generation
Okay.
because they got screwed up and were trying to find Earth again at some point, right? Is that how the series starts? It's been so long.
I can get into this if you'd like.
Please do.
Okay.
This is suddenly going to be a very long podcast.
I'll try and keep it short.
Okay, and I don't mind too many spoilers on the Star Trek Next Generation stuff.
In regards to the Next Generation, that really was the next generation of like the original series in that there were a lot of one-off episodes. There were no overriding story arcs throughout the seasons. Some seasons are better than others, just for various reasons, directors and writers and all that.
But wasn't the only thread? We have to go find Earth again.
That is the main imperative of Star Trek Voyager, which was the 4th series in the Star Trek chronology. When released, it gets complicated because time travel. The Next Generation was with Picard as the captain in the Enterprise. They did shenanigans, and it really centered. It began with Q, the omnipotent God presence thing,
yes.
and it kind of ended with Q. So with that series, they actually got somewhat of a resolution. And then Deep Space Nine came around because people still love Star Trek and they wanted a franchise out of it, which was set on a space station in the Bajoran space, I believe, after it got taken from Cardassia. That was an entirely different series within itself, which did have season-long story arcs, and is my personal favorite series. I'm not going to get too much into that because I really could. But after that was Voyager, where it got tossed all the way into the Delta Quadrant. And everything else is in the Alpha Quadrant. So they spent like 9 seasons trying to get back home, which has its own resolution in the last episode, which some people like, some people got very angry about because time travel. No, go ahead.
Wasn't there, I remember a thread about Picard wanting to go back home, and then there's this episode where he thinks he's back home, but it's actually some weird dream, horrible sequence. This might have been from the movies and not show.
It wouldn't surprise me if there were a couple episodes where Picard did do that for one reason or another. There's also the movie Generations, where he gets into the Nexus, where it's like not really heaven, more like limbo, and he wants to escape it to defeat some evil dude who's going to burn up a sun and kill all his people on a planet and various other reasons.
Yeah, the best movie of the series, I agree.
It is one of my favorite because you also see the entire destruction of the Enterprise D, which was very respectably done back in the time for their special effects. And you also got to hear Data swear, which is pretty rare. There's a 5th series, which chronologically in the Star Trek verse predates all of it, called Enterprise, with Scott Bakula.
Yes.
So that one is unique for most viewers and fans for various reasons, but that deals with a lot of time travel. And there was a point where they went back in time where there were alien Nazis taking stuff over on Earth. It's unique. And a lot of stuff with Earth on that one. That series is okay. It becomes a lot better if you read the expanded universe with the novels. It helps cover a few more bits and pieces. And it ignores the intended end, which they thankfully didn't actually do, because Star Trek would have burned to dust if they did. But yeah, those are the main series, and then there's like 13 movies or something, not counting the reboot. Maybe counting the reboot. Gets weird.
Fair enough.
But for the most part, each standalone series did have their various resolutions in their series finales.
Well, that's good.
Movies don't count in that respect.
No.
For Star Trek. Again, because time travel. For most of them.
Do video games get to count? Assuming
Yes.
a video game has a story?
By all means.
Final Fantasy X was pretty open-ended.
I
have not played a single Final Fantasy game, so I'll have to take your word on it.
Wait. Hold on, wait. Before Will begins. What did you just say?
We've been over this.
Not a single one?
I have never played a single Final Fantasy game.
That might be worse than me never having played a Zelda game.
I have nothing against the entire franchise. I
Most people
really
do.
know nothing about it. I know incredibly little about that entire series. I've just never taken the time to really check it out or figure out which game I would want to try out.
Did you at least read the webcomic series 8-Bit Theater?
Nope.
Hmm.
I know of it.
We can't talk anymore until the next talking point.
I mean, I'd recommend, if you've never played a Final Fantasy before, Final Fantasy X is a decent place to start because it is a good game. but it was definitely open-ended.
1 and 2, really good though. Still hold up.
I'll add them to the never-ending list of games that I need to play/finish.
7 also.
7 could not hold my interest. Don't know why. Nothing against it, just...
Yeah, to each their own.
Eh.
How'd you feel about 8 though?
I loved 8.
Okay, so you're an 8 person.
8
There's,
was my...
there's 2 types of people, like the whole Beatles and Rolling Stones thing. There's
Beatles.
Final Fantasy 7 and Final Fantasy 8 people.
Wait, why would people choose one over the other?
They are very... I've played both. They're like opposite ends of the spectrum in terms of gameplay.
I was asking about Beatles versus Rolling Stones, but that too.
I don't know about Beatles versus Rolling Stones.
It's one of those things that they say.
But I love Final Fantasy VIII. It was my first Final Fantasy, and I never finished it. I got all the way to the end, and the final form of the final boss beat me. And then when I had to grind levels, I got bored.
Anyone else play Legends of the Dragoon?
Yes.
How'd that end?
I don't know.
I feel like that was open-ended as well.
I never got that far into it.
Oh,
I mean, I was
she's
pretty
the
far.
moon now? I don't understand. I don't remember.
I mean, it's right here.
That brings back memories. I have a pastel painting. No, not pastel. Yes, pastel. What do you call the pastel crayons?
Pastel crayons.
Okay. So I did some art in high school of Legend of the Dragoon because I was such a huge fan.
It was a great game. I can't play any of the old PlayStation 1 games right now because my TV is too high of a resolution and will not display them.
When we get our headquarters, we're going to be able to have an older setup for all of the defunct systems, including the Atari and Intellivision that I have in the basement.
Find ourselves a CRT somewhere.
Yeah.
I have a CRT downstairs somewhere.
Don't let Calvin or I take it apart.
I was just getting ready to mention that. It'd probably be best that we just leave CRTs alone. Just
Taking those apart is
anywhere
hilariously dangerous, right?
Oh yeah, we
shit.
know.
Between the capacitors and the liquid acid that fills the bulbs.
You don't say.
Yes.
Never got to play with the liquid acid. We kind of got distracted by the capacitor.
Yeah.
Now, when you say distracted, do you mean almost electrocuted?
There's no almost about it.
Well, electrocuted implies you die. That's where the cuted part comes from. I'm
Electricity
pedantic.
went through us.
Yep.
I'm both sad and glad I was not there for that.
I wanted to take
college.
my PC speaker in my old 486 and hook it up to real speakers. So I was like, oh, I'll just cut the wires and solder these new wires from this other speaker onto it. No, apparently that's not how electricity works. And the entire computer caught on fire while I was in my bedroom. And the smoke detector went off, and I tripped the breaker.
No, we didn't manage all that.
My parents weren't home, so I was able to salvage the situation. But that could have been really bad.
This for the original talking point. Yeah, I can't think of too much that I've read that left open-ended, unresolved minor plot points.
I'm sure I have. It's just been so long that I've forgotten offhand.
That could possibly be true. And I try to avoid writing them myself.
Yeah, I try to keep track of them when I create them. Either resolve them or at least leave enough that people can connect the dots.
I have an ambiguous ending coming up in my current writing, and I have to be very delicate. I don't want it to enrage people when they finish.
Oh, I'm going to do that with my stories, just not with unresolved plots.
With suddenly resolved plots.
And then everyone died.
That was the sudden resolved plot.
Does anyone have any closing comments on this talkie point?
Authors, resolve your plots.
All right, just taking a quick peek at the comments because we have some.
Ooh.
Comments are 11 seasons of Supernatural is coming. Good lord, that's a longer running series than I would have expected. Tell all your disaster stories. No.
Bad idea. One day I'll tell the four-wheeling accident story.
We could make an entire episode or two just from personal disaster stories.
We could have it would be like a memoir episode where we all talk about one story.
It would be
That's
hard to
suitable
get
for
it
Word
down to
Ninja's
one.
podcast.
Yeah.
That would be a not suitable for.
Daryl comments, I think I handle my plots well, mostly because most of my work is based on ongoing series. Most of my subplots are either taken care of later on with my original character or canon characters. You want to know an unresolved plot point? The Dark Ocean from Adventure 2. I don't fully know the reference of that offhand. And then Charles, if you want to start in the Final Fantasy games, 1 through 9 is on PSN, 10 and 10.2 is on PS3-4, 13 Trilogy is on PS3, 11 is an MMO, so is 14, 12 you have to get an old PS2.
A bunch are on phone apps.
That's
I have 12
confusing
if
at
you
all.
want to play it.
Well, I don't have a single Sony console.
I have a PS2.
Do you have an Android device?
Yes.
Well, the first three are definitely there. I think the fourth one too, if memory serves.
Would it work on a tablet? Because my phone's kind of tiny.
It works so much better on a tablet.
I do have an Android tablet, so yeah. If I remember, I'll take a look into that. That might be worthwhile.
Yeah, I think they're like $7.99 a piece though, so
Eh,
worth it for at least the first two.
all right. Well, in the meantime, hey, we have a second talkie point this week.
What kind of monster would add a second talkie point and drag this podcast out for
Normally
another
that would be
30
me.
minutes?
But I don't remember writing this talkie point.
Nope, it was me. I came up with the talkie point. There's a bug crawling around my desk. Weird. I don't know what that is. It's a little early for bugs. Anyways, the actual talkie point. Flash fiction. So, I've been doing a lot of looking into how people go about their flash fiction and what defines flash fiction. And I kind of wanted to get everyone else's perspective about what do you define flash fiction as? What's your general word count? Do you keep it strict to a certain word count? Where's your comfort zone in word count? Has anything bigger ever come from one of your flash fictions? For me, I did do for quite a while 100 words a day, which I would argue may not be so much flash fiction as it is prompt writing, but I don't know, you could count it if there's a thorough plot. Although most of it was single scenes, so maybe you couldn't really call it a full story. And I did that for quite a while and had a lot of fun with that. The main reason why I'm bringing it up and researching it now is that typing a novel on a typewriter when you live in an apartment that you share with other people makes it extremely difficult because it's extremely loud. And normally I'd be like, oh, I'll just wake up early and tap away at it for like an hour. But I don't want to hurt my poor neighbors downstairs with tippity taps at 6 a.m.
But you have a quiet deluxe. By definition, it has to be quiet.
Quieter is not quiet by any stretch. So I really want to not hurry up, but I really want to get deep into this novel. And it's Camp NaNoWriMo this month. And my goal is to write Act 3 of my novel that I wrote for NaNoWriMo and didn't finish Act 3 because I couldn't figure it out. and it had some inspiration. But that's neither here nor there. What I want to use a typewriter for is for flash fiction. Just, wake up every morning, or come home from work, I should say. I can't really wake up every morning. Come home from work and bang something out, scan it, throw it up on my website. I thought it'd be pretty cool to do something like that. And then maybe as I got better and better at the typewriter, maybe I could then write novels and stuff on it. But I kind of wanted to get everyone else's opinions on word count and how you guys deal with extremely shortened plots and perhaps lack of subplots when you're limiting yourself to a certain word count.
Just to be clear, so we're all on the same page, what is your definition of flash fiction after your research?
Well, I might be using the terminology incorrectly, but I think of it as a short standalone story that would be smaller and shorter than what would normally be considered a short story. The number that I hear a lot is 250 words. I've seen it go up to 500 words, as low as 100 words, depending on where you draw that line. It doesn't necessarily have to be fan fiction. It can be its own standalone thing. So that's what I've come up with, but I kind of wanted to get everyone else's take since you guys probably have more experience with it and have probably done it more than I have.
As I am an incredibly wordy writer, as some people unfortunately know, I always considered flash fiction to be 1,000 words, and then up to 5,000 is like a short story, and then beyond that you start getting into a novella and then novels. But that's my limits. And I haven't really done flash fiction since first college, when it was part of my creative writing class, and we'd do it every single class, because we'd have different prompts each time. And it was actually a lot of fun. I found it pretty rewarding, and that was the instigation for the slash and burn verse, for better or worse.
Oh, so this is relatable. My quandary about has anything bigger ever come from it.
Yeah, a novel 10 years in the making, based off of a one-page writing prompt.
So I got this really cool book that was recommended to me by, I think it was, who does Coursera? Is that, which college is that?
I don't think it's MIT's. Theirs is different. I haven't been over there in a while, so I forget offhand. I want to say MIT is open course or something like that.
Coursera's Duke University? Maybe I am thinking of open course. Okay, well, I didn't do any research in this, so let's move forward. I heard that laughing. So, the book is called What If, and it has a bunch of really cool prompts and like writing exercises in it that I want to go through finally. And then I do also have a short story book. I think I've brought it up on the podcast before, but that was many, many episodes ago. But I really want to get back into writing, and I feel like if I only have a certain amount of time, I don't want to dig really deep into my novel, but doing some flash fiction and getting into that habit is something that I really want to get into, especially with my awesome typewriter that I bought and haven't really used effectively.
I don't want to ruin the book for you, but that is basically my writing prompt Bible, that What If book. That's what I used back in college. That's what I've continuously gone back to.
Really?
It's on my shelf somewhere back there. It's one of my favorite writing prompt generators.
That's cool. That doesn't ruin it. That excites me that I chose something that other people aren't aware of.
Yours is probably in considerably better condition than mine, though.
And it's probably like the 5th edition versus your 0.5 edition.
Hey, 0.76.
Copyright 1997.
Which is odd, considering college was in like 2005 for that class.
Man, the 90s were a long time ago. Anyways. What about Will? You usually write serials, though. individual chapters might have their standalone stories.
I haven't written anything like that since college partially for the same reason as CJ, because I had classes that were like with writing prompts, you have 10 minutes, write a thing. And partially because I had other classes that were not writing classes that I was bored in, and instead of taking notes, I would write little one-off things, as Calvin can attest to, as he's watched me do it.
Page after page after page.
Now, does flash fiction require a writing prompt by definition?
Probably not. You just need an idea. Which I guess is a self-created writing prompt if you want to get technical about it.
I guess so.
A lot of what I write a lot of one-off stuff now, but I don't know if I'd call it flash fiction. I never checked the word counts. I can actually check the word counts of some of my independent stuff right now.
Somebody just drove by in a very loud car. I apologize.
Let's see. This is...
I'm still hoping to do a flash fiction piece one of these weeks based off of the Muse Food stuff, because there are some prompts in there that do give me ideas. I just never sit down and actually work on them.
I have one piece here that's 2,500 words. This one was really short. 1,200, almost 1,300 words. I probably don't usually write under 1,000.
Because then you're almost writing just a single scene. I found the 100 words a day extremely constraining, but fun in that it was constraining. 250 words doesn't seem like a lot more than that. It's more like a single scene that kind of paints a picture of the prompt. So maybe I'd be looking at something more 1,000-wordsy.
One flash fiction style that I did have fun with was the 1,000 words, but 1,000 words exactly from beginning to end.
That's what I did with the 100 words, the exact 100 words.
Yeah. It's actually pretty interesting once you get close to that 100-word mark, how you rephrase things and cut off words as necessary.
Wikipedia basically says there's no widely accepted definition. It can range from as low high caps as 300 words, while others are more like in the thousands.
I looked through my Google Drive, and my smallest one was 860 words.
And for our viewers and listeners out there, by all means, post in the comments if you write flash fiction or what your word counts have been for such endeavors. Because we seem to be all across the board, just within the crew.
I wish I could find the last thing I wrote. All I remember is that it was 8 pages long. Single spaced.
Was it part of your hacker story?
No, this was actually a side quest for that when we were playing D&D.
I remember that. That was the your background, right?
Yes.
Let me check. I might still have that.
It was supposed to be like a quick 10-minute story. Ended up being like a half hour.
It was really well written, though. It was amazing.
So back when we were an actual party.
Yeah. Where on earth did I put it?
Can I check to see just emails from just Calvin?
OpenCourseWare is what I used, and that is MIT.
Okay.
We weren't crazy.
We were close. This time shift is confusing me. I feel like, oh no, we've already run for a whole hour on talkie points.
Keep thinking that.
Wait, we haven't.
Don't stop thinking that.
We still have a whole another half hour for talkie points.
Brevity.
Oh, here it
What's
is.
that?
Well, I found it.
Okay, good.
About 7.5 pages, 4,876 words.
Nice.
I had fun writing that one.
It was great. And you did a lot of good research into it, too.
Yeah, I really wanted to, make that one as authentic as I could. And I know you really liked her and his siblings.
Yes.
Is that what made him evil?
Yes.
It didn't help.
He wasn't angry. He wasn't evil. He just had anger issues.
Just a wee bit of a short temper.
That too. Having two brothers that tried to kill you at one point doesn't help.
No.
As also a closing remark, the Art of the Short Story is the other book that I have that I really recommend. It has a great collection of short stories and usually some notes from the author about the story.
Art as in A-R-T or A-R-C?
Wait, did I say art? The art of the short story, yes.
Okay. I didn't hear it quite clearly enough.
That's fine. But you can look it up. The course that I was starting to take, but then just started reading the book and not taking the actual course, is writing and reading short stories. And that's on the MIT OpenCourseWare. Feel free to check those books out that they recommend.
Most of those courses are actually pretty good just to listen to, even if you don't really go through all of the actual coursework. It's pretty fascinating what they put together.
This one's unfortunately not a video course. It's all lecture notes. And there's no, the problem with writing courses online is that if you don't have something that's going on that's active, it's kind of impossible to get feedback.
True.
But the book they recommend and some of the notes that they have I'd really recommend checking out.
If it weren't Camp Nano season, I'd think about maybe doing some flash fiction. Never mind that I haven't really done much for Camp Nano to begin with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll get to that later in the podcast.
But in the meantime, it's time for highlights. And it's really just news, because I didn't toss more in there. Oh, and I didn't format those correctly, but... Alright, starting things off. Come on. Let me screen share. Please? Come on. There we go.
Got it.
It was being stubborn. Alright, the first piece, if you're on Twitter on a regular basis, you might have seen this going around, or Tumblr, probably Reddit, knowing them. There's a new hashtag kicking around, which is very realistic YA, which is pretty amusing to see what some people come up with to explain just what very realistic young adult stories would actually be, rather than what current YA is. Stuff like, girl gets a note reading, I know what you did last summer. She's relieved someone is finally reading her Tumblr. There are teenagers outside of North America. They have feelings and wants, too. So really, it is realistic young adult concepts and...
Right, it's playing against type of the tropes that
Yeah.
you would see in young adult. There's a lot of I should look at what those really hilarious Twitter accounts are. Similar along the same lines. Maybe I'll
Yeah,
bring
there are
them
some
up.
good ones out there.
They are hilarious. There's a sci-fi one and a young adult one, dystopian future one. It's like,
Mm.
oh, Johnny Sue has to take a test to decide what their entire fate's going to be. That's never been done before.
Shy girl has crush on shy boy. They never speak. Granted, if any of these were to actually be put into a story, there wouldn't really be much of a plot, and the story wouldn't really go very far. That's why young adult is primarily fiction, not fact. If it was young adult nonfiction, not quite sure how interesting the stories would get. Relatable, yeah, sure, but not as fantastical as some of the YA fiction out there. But yeah, if you're on Twitter and other such media sites that track hashtags, you should check out the very realistic YA hashtag, because it's pretty entertaining. Instead of deciding to save the world, the heroine decides to binge watch something on Netflix. That's accurate.
Relatable.
Next one up over on Design Taxi is the world's greatest storytellers in an infographic.
The world's worst infographic.
Now, this is an infographic, and it is pretty nicely organized in that you can see the chronology of all the authors, but
And yet,
the sample size, as it was notated, was about 500 people, ranging from authors to industry people and stuff like that.
to
So
complete imbeciles, to...
it's not exactly the largest sample size to give necessarily an accurate representation of how popular certain authors were, or the fact that some of these people are not necessarily actual authors. But it's interesting, at least to me, in how they ordered it all chronologically. I presume from when they were writing stuff, when the author was born or something. Not quite sure how they organized that.
with reckless abandon, it looks like.
Yeah, a bit.
Yeah, it looks like they
Full circles.
they did it
Oh,
by,
sorry, Calvin.
yeah, it looks like they did it by author's birth date of birth.
I guess that would make sense. Maybe that's why Jesus is in there, just to give the 0 mark. I'm not quite sure about that. That one kind of confuses me a bit.
There are actual authors who have a smaller circle than Jesus on this list, like F. Scott Fitzgerald and Ernest Hemingway.
Hmm.
And
Even
Walt
Dr.
Disney.
Zeus is smaller, which is a little disappointing.
Did Walt Disney and Steven Spielberg actually write anything?
I feel like they have, but
I mean, they may have. But I'm
nothing
just not familiar with it.
significant compared to all the other work they've done.
You'll be happy to know that Isaac Asimov is nowhere on this list that I can see.
Wait, really? I didn't even think to look. But
See, you're
What?
one of them.
I just assumed that he would be on there. I didn't look for him specifically. That's-
Bill Clinton is on this list.
So is Morgan Freeman, which, as I commented before we went live, he's great as a narrator, but I'm not familiar with any of his actual literary works.
And Kevin Spacey is on this list.
It's interesting.
No Ray Bradbury either.
What?
Did they include musical writers? Because Bruce Springsteen is also on this list.
Okay, it's
Yeah,
world's
they-
greatest
yeah, they-
storytellers in their defense.
Oh.
Yeah, they got
So,
musicians in there. They got Morrissey, they got Johnny Cash, Bob Dylan.
Well, that's
Mm.
semantics, then.
Oprah Winfrey is on this list.
Mm-hmm.
And they gave a
That would
breakdown
explain.
of what storyteller or what industries prefer in regards to storytellers, but would have appreciated had they put this little thing all the way up top, which was their color chart to reference who's under which industry, all the way down here, so you can more easily reference who prefers what.
Hmm.
It's a little awkward otherwise. Sorry, Calvin, I cut you off. And you're a little quiet as well.
I was gonna say that would explain why Monet is in this list here. It's about storytellers and not like, authors/writers specifically.
I didn't pick up on that semantics beforehand when I put it in the show notes,
Hmm.
but and it is still very interesting. And I guess it helps explain somewhat why William Shakespeare is so big compared to some of the others, because he has some of the most memorable stories. Kind of wish some of these smaller circles were a little bit bigger, though. We should make our own infographic.
Oh God, what would we put?
Yes,
As the
let's please make
infographic?
a new.
Our own version of this here.
Mm-hmm.
Although our sample size would be like 5 people.
That'd
Can
still
we
be more
use
accurate.
mauve and puce as colors?
Only if I can use
Possible.
chartreuse. But yeah, that is the infographic of the world's quote unquote greatest storytellers. Next piece on the highlights reel is, oh, that's not at the top, is The Psychology of Inspirational Women, focusing specifically on Katniss Everdeen. Now, I'm not going to actually go through too much of this article because there are significant spoilers throughout. Thankfully, all that red stuff, significant spoilers. You actually have to
Hmm.
move your mouse over it to see what it says. So if you're worried about spoilers for whatever reason, if you haven't read it or seen the movies, then you can be safe. You can skim through this. You'll be okay. But they actually did a really good job of breaking down this character and explaining just why the character does certain things near the end of the story and what the real world psychology of it is. And as one who likes to create characters and then break them in psychologically horrifying manners, I appreciated this article. So it's definitely worth a read. And I still gotta read that frickin' series.
Eh.
It's in my pile.
Eh.
Well, one of my piles. And the next one is called The Dictionary of Obscure Sorrows, which I feel is kind of like the Urban Dictionary in regards to submissions, but a little more melancholy.
Hmm.
I know it kind of intrigued Justin before the
Yeah,
show.
the first thing on the page, I guess this would be the latest thing, theoretically. I can definitely relate to and understand where people come from. It's, I'm going to pronounce this wrong, obviously, but Lachecism, which is the desire to be struck by disaster. And then basically it would put it, I'll just read it word for word. To survive a plane crash, to lose everything in a fire, to plunge over a waterfall, which would put a kink in the smooth arc of your life and forge it into something hardened and flexible and sharp, not just a stiff, prefabricated beam that barely covers the gap between one end of your life and the other. Basically, this is a combination of martyrdom and narcissism where you want a lot of attention from everybody, and you notice that the best way to get attention is for something horribly tragic to happen to you and for you to make your way through the tragedy and then being able to tell your story, tell people how tragic your life was, people going, oh, woe is you, oh, you're so brave for going through this situation. So I definitely understand the appeal, and I'm very interested in reading the rest of these, because if they're as similar as the first one that I read, these are definitely emotional quandaries that come up from time to time with multiple people.
Yeah, there's a lot of good words and concepts and references on this list that's definitely worth a peruse when you have a moment.
The third word down kind of threw me off a little bit, but then again, I was thinking of another word.
Which one? Onism?
Yes. Is that how it's pronounced?
I don't know, that's how I pronounce it.
I was pronouncing it onism, and for a second I got confused because I was thinking of the word onanism, which is something completely different.
And for the audio listeners, onism or onism is the awareness of how little of the world you'll experience.
No, why did I get introduced to that concept?
I've already introduced myself to that concept countless times.
I know I definitely have.
The world is too big. Never mind the multiverse.
And that is why I peruse Tumblr so much.
I can never pronounce words that have umlauts and other such accents on them, but Vemodalin, the fear that everything has already been done. Or basically, The Simpsons.
Okay, so I wasn't the only one that thought about that.
That was my first thought with that word.
Yeah.
The Simpsons have done everything. But yeah, it's a fun little site, and there's 115 pages worth of words on there, so it might take you a while to get through them all. But still, worth a peruse. Next up is an interesting piece about how apparently Mallrats 2 is actually going to be a thing.
Did you do the thing where you updated the wrong show notes? Oh no, I just didn't click on it somehow. Never mind.
I added it at the last minute.
Damn it.
Yeah. But yeah, apparently Mallrats has been kind of bumped up in Kevin Smith's list of movies to do. Not quite sure how I feel about that, but if they can pull it off, all the better. I feel about the same in regards to Mallrats 2 as I do about Clerks 3.
I think I'd have more of an opinion if I saw Mallrats.
We need a Dogma too.
Basically any new Kevin Smith movie. I'm intrigued, but I don't know. Sequels don't always go over
I
well.
just need more Jason Smith in my life.
Who?
Oh wait, not Jason Smith. What the hell's his name?
Jason Mewes?
1 second, let me check.
They have a list on the screen at the moment of the main cast, and he
Nope.
tends to use a fair amount of the people.
No, please.
And I have no idea what his next Canadian...
Jason Lee, that's what I was thinking of.
Oh, yeah, he's at the top of that list.
I need Jason Lee in my life.
I'm curious about Smith's next Canadian-themed horror movie, Moose Jaws.
I'm sold.
It's like Jaws, but with a moose.
That would explain why it's in Canada.
Now that I'd go to see.
So would I, actually.
I still haven't seen Tusk. As a fan of the Human Centipede franchise, I feel like it's my duty to see it.
Well, if you do a review for the channel. Let us know how it is. And in semi-related news for movies, apparently Five Nights at Freddy's is getting picked up by Warner Brothers for the movie. And there was a gigantic image here at some point, but it didn't want to load. But yeah, apparently Five Nights at Freddy's is going to be a movie now. I'm not quite sure how I feel about that, personally, but
Depends on if the script is good.
I think my main curiosity is live action or animated.
It's definitely going to be live action.
I hope so.
Live action would be a lot freakier if they can pull it off.
It's going to be so many jump scares, though. I'm so sick of movie jump scare horror movies.
But that's what Five Nights at Freddy's is.
I know.
Yeah.
That's why it's going to be an awful movie.
Well, the producer's the guy that did The Ring and The Grudge.
That doesn't really help me, considering my opinions on those two movies. I mean, they were respectably done. I'll give them that, but
I have a
Meh.
semi-related question. How do you make a movie based off of Minecraft?
Yeah, that's what I was getting ready to mention.
they'll find a
Saw
way.
at the bottom.
Oh. Studio is also developing a movie based on another runaway indie hit, Minecraft. Are you gonna load?
Are they trying to capitalize on freaking how great the Lego movie did?
Maybe.
I hope not, because the Lego movie had a clear build up to the Lego movie. They had an original franchise in Legos, and then they slowly migrated to video games.
Hmm.
Well, actually, it was really like Legos, and then Lego Technic, and then video games, and then the movie. Are you gonna load or not? Come on now.
While it's loading this just in, there's another Alvin and the Chipmunks movie coming out this year called Road Chip. See, it's funny because it's a pun on road trip, but because they're chipmunks, it's called Road Chip. See, do you see where I'm going with this?
No, I don't get it. Can you explain it for me, please?
Okay, so Chip is a pseudo half portmanteau of chipmunk and trip. It's a punny play on words.
Live action? But everything's blocks.
Are you gonna load? What's going on here? Are we not allowed to learn about the Minecraft movie? Is it going to be that bad that a website's not even going to load with the info for it?
You should be counting your blessings.
No, I can't really say much about a Minecraft movie, considering
I
I
can.
want to see Pixel. Pixel still looks amusing to me.
Okay, I have the page for the Minecraft movie up.
Alright, do you want to screen share it?
Yeah, I'll screen share it.
Alright, I'll flip it to you.
Oh, are you screen? Oh, okay.
I was, but now I'm off.
Screen
So now you
share.
can.
Hangouts. There's going to be infinity screen. And there we go.
There we go.
Minecraft movie in development at Warner Brothers.
Now, in development could also just mean that they bought the exclusive rights to make a movie.
Well,
Unless
let's
there's a director and a script attached, it's probably not going to go anywhere.
They acquired the rights from Mojang to make the live action film, but that implies that eventually, I doubt it's like an indefinite rights. They're going to have to either make a movie or hand it back over eventually. That's why there's so many issues with comic book movies. Eventually you have to make a movie or hand back the rights.
They did shut down a Kickstarter for a fan film for Minecraft, which shows that there is interest in them doing it themselves.
Huh.
Interesting.
And apparently also Temple Run.
There's no plot in that.
There's
And
no
they
plot
already
in
made a
Minecraft
movie.
either.
It's called Indiana Jones.
I say as they've made a Battleship movie.
They did make a
Was
Battleship movie.
awesome.
Which, to be fair, I did enjoy. Just, it had nothing to do with the game.
Not true.
It had nothing to do with the game.
Not true.
Were
So
there ships in it?
there's something subtle in the movie that a lot of people didn't pick up on, I found out. And that, you remember the main weapon that the aliens were shooting? How there are these giant,
Vaguely.
there are these giant, like, high-impact cylinders
Yeah.
slam into the ship?
Oh,
Those are the
God damn
pegs.
it. Really? Really?
Those are the pegs,
That's what they're trying to
yes!
go for?
That's what they were going for. It was awesome.
Did they actually use the right amount of
hell
impact
no.
pegs per proper ship, though?
No. But they did have a grid system, if you remember. Because
Yeah.
of all the NOAA buoys.
That was admittedly pretty cool how they did that. I'll give them that.
What was not cool is that there was an awesome line in the trailer by Liam Neeson, which is never spoken out loud in the movies. And
Is
it
it?
was just a scene from the trailer, and fuck all y'all for doing that to me. Because that's literally the only reason why I went.
What line was it?
Fire the guns. Which guns, sir? All of them. Liam Neeson saying all of them.
How could they pull that from the movie? That's like a requirement in a movie like that. You have to have that type of line.
Because he's not actually in the movie.
Ah, well. Bah. So yeah, apparently Minecraft is also a thing that may potentially be a movie eventually.
And Notch is in on it, so
Hmm.
so that's a thing.
Yay. And conveniently, that is all the news and various highlights for this week. Hooray! Which means it's time for the Productivity and Inspiration Station segment.
Boo.
Shush. We're doing the segment anyway,
Boo.
whether you like it or not.
I'm leaving.
Well, fine. Yeah, I've done as Justin has commanded and actually been reading my books rather than buying more.
Yes.
What is it, Wednesday, I guess? So, Monday, I think, I finished A Dream of God and Monsters, which is the third book in supposedly a trilogy, which makes me upset because there's still unresolved plot. And I'll give Lainey Taylor this. She writes a damn good story. But the last, like, third of that book felt rushed because stuff was happening page after page. Characters died. Characters lived. Wait, characters that died came back. And then they didn't. But wait, they were invisible. Because magic and angels and stuff happens. So I need more of that universe. Because reasons. And the only other productivity-based piece was I actually delivered my secret project of secretness finally on Saturday. And that went over better than I expected, which is nice. And I will not be doing that again anytime soon because too many books.
And it would help if you got the right size equipment.
Yeah, there's a big difference between O5 pens and 005 pens.
Yes, there is.
I wish I could show on the screen, but I doubt the resolution is big enough to actually show the difference.
Well, one wouldn't show up at all. It would be smaller than a pixel.
Ah, don't run away. Let's see. You got an O5 on the screen. On the screen, damn it. You got an O5 pen. You can actually see the nib on my arm because that's bright and white.
Mm-hmm.
That's blue, I think. Did I pick a blue? Yeah. And then I grabbed, apparently, a 005 orange.
I can't see the nib.
Jeez.
Turns out.
Yeah. So there's a bit of a difference in that the nib is basically not there.
Okay, 005 looks like one of my freaking testing lenses.
Yeah, that made for interesting drawing times because I really wanted an orange, and all of these pens were just loose in a bin, so you just pick up whichever ones you want, which is probably why I ended up with a 005, but apparently the purple one that I picked up was also already dead, so I didn't really get to use that much.
Always ask for them to grab the pen from the back.
I was the one grabbing them. They were right in front, so
No, I mean-
what I should have done was actually test them myself.
What I mean is when you're going to buy pens, call over an associate and say, I want this pen, but can you get me a new one from the back room? Because that way you get one that hasn't been used by other customers.
I could probably do that there, depending on the person. Some of them can be a little cranky, but I should remember that.
Yeah, you never want to get a pen that's been out in display because other people will use them, and then you get a pen that's half dead or dead.
Yeah, and also in comparison, like the largest one I got is a 3. So,
3.
which is basically calligraphy versus the 05. So, but yes, fun times were had. And do I still have that? Hey, I do still have that. Just for shits and giggles, because I didn't close the tab. That is what I used all of my damn pens on for like a week and a half. Because why would I do anything else at night? Too many books, even for me. But yeah, that was fun. That has been what I've been up to. Hey, Will, what have you been up to?
I have been up to. I finished and posted chapter 28 of Roommate. The last day of last month, whatever day that was. When was that? Friday?
The last day of last month was Tuesday,
Tuesday.
because April 1st was Wednesday.
Oh no, I got it out. I didn't make it by then. I got it out Friday or Saturday. It went up Saturday.
That was the 4th.
Yeah. Dates confusing. Whatever. It went out Saturday, so I was happy about that. Excuse me. Simultaneously, I officially launched my Patreon page for writing.
Yay!
That is up as well. I call that productive. Figured it would be good to launch both at the same time. Here's a story, and by the way, if you want to support me on Patreon, here it is. And then, I mentioned it before, but I've spent the day drawing and arting and sketching and doing the art thing as well.
Yay!
So, yay indeed.
Everybody's going to be an artist.
And that's mostly it for me.
And what has Justin been up to?
Fuck all. Moving forward. Okay, honestly, I'm drowning in work right now.
Again?
Well, it's worse because... Actually, it's not worse. It's just as bad as it usually is. But the problem is I'm taking a vacation next week. I'm going to be in Arizona for a week. So any critical deadlines that are during that week, I have to finish by Friday. And boy, do I have a big one.
What are you even doing on the show, then?
I found this more important. Everyone needs a break. I can't work for 24 hours straight without, jumping off of a cliff. So that's why I'm here. And let's see. As far as anything creative goes, I tested out the Twitch live streaming, found that using a controller when you have certain hotkeys set to turn on and off the broadcast really screws it up, and it ended up cutting out so much that I ended up deleting all the feeds because it's such a broken mess. I didn't actually keep any of it. So most of the live streaming that I did over the weekend is totally ruined. I I did update the bit rate, and I did change the hotkeys to something less likely to uh, overlap with a controller. Uh, and I did play the first semester of How to Faux Boyfriend, and I encourage you all, behind the scenes before it's cut down, to check out the show in its entirety on the Twitch video archive on my channel. Uh, it is exactly what I expected, although I must say that the way that it's done is very interesting. I won't spoil too much, and I'm only in the first semester, obviously, but the little background bits and pieces of the world building that they throw in every now and then, you just shake your head and go, "What the fuck?" Like the how much do I want to spoil? I mean, you guys have all know what I'm talking about, right? Like they'll show, oh, where your main character lives, and you go, "Wait, what?" And then they show your main character walking around in the city, and then you see what the city looks like, and you're like, "Wait, what?" And so I'm very interested to seeing how the world unfolds, even if I find all of the bird puns extremely frustrating and uncomfortable. But you should definitely check out me playing that game. It is a very good watch, I'd say. And it turns out there's almost no options. You're just basically, it's a very linear story. So you're not going to really spoil anything by not playing it, or you're not going to miss out on anything watching a stream versus playing it.
Okay. Cool.
And other than that, I'm looking forward to taking a vacation. I'm looking forward to starting to be inspired. I guess last week I was inspired because I figured out what my Act 3 was going to be. I was lying in bed and figured out basically all of Act 3 of my novel, which I'm going to write out. I'm not sure how the act is going to transition into Act 4. That's still a loose end, but having most of Act 3 figured out is a huge weight off my shoulders. So I'm really looking forward to writing now.
Nice.
Excuse me. So maybe I got more done than I thought, but
Hooray!
I'd like to get a lot more done, and hopefully next week will be that. And speaking of which, I won't be on the podcast next week for the reason that I'll be on break. So the next update you'll get will be a 2-week update where I'm sure I got lots of stuff done. Right, future Justin?
We'll have to wait and see.
I guess so.
And speaking of story inspiration, it is all Will's fault that I now have figured out how the third act of my steampunk assassin tea shop baker plot thing happens.
Not sorry.
Mm.
I'm great at inspiring others.
That really was, admittedly, a plot hole in that story of how does this, not revolution occur? How does it kick off? Well, having exploding heads made out of marmalade actually fits in, which is frustrating.
How dare you come up with cohesive plot?
And with explosive marmalade, no less. I hate marmalade.
That's why it's so explosive.
Fair point.
To be fair, it was your own dream mind that came up with it. I just help you solidify it.
Yeah, but those were explosive zombie heads, not explosive
I'd argue
candy
you
heads.
liquefied it more than solidified it, but
Whatever. Curate it.
Usually it's all Calvin's fault. Hey, speaking of Calvin, what have you been up to this week?
So at one point in a 3-day span, working with Richie, we hammered out 3 new songs for Infinity's Light, which was pretty exciting.
That's awesome.
I'm giving my brain a break for the moment, so I can try to come up with new ideas. Ideas are coming and going, but as they do, as you guys have heard like countless times me mention.
Hmm.
But like that one, like that was pretty epic, and one of those songs is like one of my favorites that I've put out of anything I've put out so far. So that's pretty exciting.
That's a pretty bold statement considering some of the stuff you've put out.
I should let you listen to that track.
Yeah,
Is
I'm
there
kind
one
of
you want me to
intrigued.
listen to that? Have you heard any of the other ones?
I've heard one track that was in the works. I don't think it had been approved yet, and that was pretty early
Oh,
on. Which reminds me, I really should start reading Chapter 7.
yes, you should do that. So there was that. It is also a pretty significant weight loss that I've been going through. Um, since let's see, since the end of January, since say the last week of January, I've dropped 16 pounds. So,
That's pretty damn impressive.
so that's a thing that's been happening, and it's been quite surprising too. This is the first time I've been under 170 pounds since like sophomore year of high school, sophomore junior year.
Now I just got to bulk up, start lifting those weights.
Yeah, I might do that, but I think I don't really want to bulk up really. I just want to like be a bit more lean. Like
That's
the
fair.
muscle that I have now is like I have quite a bit of muscle just naturally. So I just want to lean things up a little bit. So there was that. And let's see, I also did a thing in After Effects that like, I kind of want to show you guys tonight, but since we have the meeting tomorrow, I'll do it then.
Aww. Tease.
It was an idea I've been toying around with ever since before I completed the Inspire the Muse logo. So finally having the logo done, and I was able to play around with that idea, and it came out like better than I expected. It's something simple, but something I hope you guys might appreciate. So we'll touch on that tomorrow.
Well, now I'm all intrigued.
Ooh, I have things to bring up tomorrow too.
I think several of us do, so it's going to be an interesting meeting,
Yep.
Mm.
but a productive one. Maybe an inspiring one for all we know.
Mm,
We shall
Doesn't
see.
sound like gloom and doom tomorrow.
I'll be yelling at people. It'll be fun.
Mm.
I thought yelling was my job.
No, but I'm yelling about real things. It's the difference.
Oh, okay then.
Spoiler alert, I was horrified to find something out over the weekend about our infrastructure.
I apologize for nothing. And I don't even know what this is in reference to, but still, I apologize for nothing.
I didn't even add it to Asana yet because I was afraid it would elicit anxiety in everyone.
I can do that on my own. I don't need help with that.
Exactly.
Yeah, that is the productivity segment for our viewers and listeners. By all means, post in the comments what you've been up to over the past week. How have you been productive or inspired? How have your projects been going? Let us know. And speaking of how things have been going, I think although I've said this a couple times already, our events list is as final as it's going to get, at least in regards to events that we're even considering. Because I don't want to add more. Because reasons. And I mean, we're still coordinating some attendance issues, and I'm still poking people about press possibilities, but we have a pretty full year, mainly in August. It's just one after another. But I'm excited. And all the links are there, so if you want to find out where we're going to be when, so you can track us down in person if you'd like, by all means, check it out. And before I start wrapping things up, I have a question mainly for the crew because it's going to take a while for the viewers to actually respond because of video lag, but seeing as I finally finished a trilogy, I have other books, like 300, that I need to read. So I chose 3. You get to choose which one I read next.
Ooh.
All right.
It's either going to be Damsel Distressed by Kelsey Mackey, which I don't think is part of a series, at least not from what I remember. But that one looked interesting. That's from Book Expo last year. I still haven't gotten to it. Hey, also from Book Expo last year, Enchanted by Althea Contis. This was technically published before Book Expo. I think she was releasing her second or third book even at Book Expo last year, but because I hadn't read the first one, I got the first one signed. Or Apollo's Daughters, which is actually a series of short stories by various authors, all female authors, which I got part of. It was a Kickstarter for someone. I forget who specifically. But tell me, oh wise peoples, what should I read next?
Have you read a collection of short stories in a while?
Considering how long I have to think about that, no, I have not read anything in.
I would go for that
at
just
least
as
while.
a break of pace.
Yeah, let's see. I think both Enchanted and Damsel Distressed are pretty fantasy-based. Yeah, those are probably going to be relatively similar, at least in characters, not in plot, so... Apollo's Daughters. Some of the best and biggest names in science fiction have lent their talents to silence in the library for this collection of genre stories, all featuring some of the coolest and most complex female characters. From a woman trapped in a robotic suit in a grim Australian future, to a magic-wielding Russian soldier on the run from her own side. Alright, that is legitimately interesting.
It's sci-fi. Go for it.
Fair enough. Apollo's Daughters it is. And with that, time to start wrapping things up. Because, oh hey, it's actually been almost an hour and a half. Look at that. And if we have entertained you in any way, shape, or form, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, where theoretically you're actually watching this. You can watch our entire backlog of Word Ninja Live episodes. You can comment on some of the Game Break episodes where either we're actually relaxed or we break because of the games we play. You can...
Or we're terrified out of our skins.
That too. Or all of the above in one episode.
Mm.
And you can even thumbs up some of our Muse food prompts that we post every Saturday if you get inspired. If you want to chat to us or chat with us via social media, you can track us down on Twitter at FCWordNinja, and you get bonus points if you use the hashtag WordNinjas. You can also follow us on Tumblr over at fcwordninja.tumblr.com, or go like our Facebook page, facebook.com/fullcoveragewriters, which we tend to use mostly for just posting interesting articles on the art of writing or just notifications for when a new video is up. You can use any of these methods to converse with us, talk to us, ask us questions that we can use on future episodes. We like conversing with our viewers and listeners out there. And if you want to help fund all of our various crazy endeavors, you can go peruse our Etsy store, which is etsy.com/shop/full-coverage-writers, where we have all sorts of shiny baubles for you, from bookmarks to buttons to books to booklets, all sorts of things starting with the letter B, except for the writer's block plushies. Those don't start with a B. But they're cute and adorable, and they will judge you until you get creative. So you should get one. And as with all of our various crazy endeavors, it is currently brought to you by Full Coverage Writers. And another fucking Japanese beetle that is in my room. These things will not die. Sorry. They're distracting. I've lost count of how many of these I've gotten rid of.
I still don't know what this weird bug on my desk crawling around is. It looks like some sort of beetle, but it's really small.
Maybe it's a death beetle.
And it's got weird stripes on it.
Stripes are odd.
Hmm.
Maybe you should be concerned.
Like zigzags. Anyways, keep going.
But yeah, the show is primarily brought to you by Full Coverage Writers, not various insects. You can go check out fcwriters.com, which has the entire archive of our Word Ninjas Live, all of the writing prompts, game break episodes, any of the events that we go to, all the press stuff, everything. Definitely worth perusing. In regards to each of us, if you want to track us down individually, I can be tracked down via my personal Tumblr, fancypantswolf.tumblr.com. If you want to check out my trilogy in the works, it's /nburntrilogy.tumblr.com, and basically 50-50 shot of finding me on the Fairy Tale podcast as Makarov on Monday nights at 10 p.m. Eastern Time on their YouTube channel. And where can people find Will?
As usual, you can usually find me on my Tumblr page at darkhom.tumblr.com. It's darkhom.tumblr.com. It's where you can. It's where I usually am most of the time, just farting around doing whatever I feel like doing, while being creative on the side. If you have any interests in my story, My Roommate's a Stripper, you can find stuff about that at myroommatesastripper.tumblr.com. And if you are interested in checking out my Patreon, you can find that out at I gotta double check the URL. www.patreon.com/darkhome.
And where can people find Justin?
You can find me on my website, mechanicaljustin.com, and follow me on Twitch at mechanicaljustin as well, so you can be alerted whenever I'm live streaming, which probably won't be for another week and a half, but once that week and a half is over, I will be live streaming almost constantly.
Just 24/7 nonstop?
Almost constantly.
Except for when you hit the wrong hotkey?
Almost constantly. I couldn't be more clear.
Hey, Calvin, where can people find you?
Let's see. Twitter and Instagram are at ccwii. Tumblr is instacal.tumblr.com. And SoundCloud is soundcloud.com/soundsbycalvin.
All right. And with that, that is a show. Thank you for joining us for episode 86 of Word Ninjas Live. Tune in next week for when we're Justin free and we can do whatever the heck we want.
You should talk about anime that day.
Join us for next week when it's episode 87.
I think it's a scarab.
What the hell are you doing with a scarab?
I don't know.
Did you bring the mummy back to life again?
Not to my knowledge.
You really shouldn't do that. He gets cranky.
Yeah. Well,
Not read from the Book of the Dead!
Well, before Justin gets killed on screen, let's end this episode.
I don't think it's a stink bug.
Famous last words.
Situation. Not reading the last couple pages of the Dark Tower series is recommended by Stephen King himself.
I've gotten through the first 4 books or so, and then it went really weird, and I couldn't get the next book because the library was being silly.
I have all of them, so. But you cannot borrow them until you finish a book.
I finished 3 books. I finished a whole trilogy.
Well, you can borrow 3 of my books. I didn't see the last. I watched Star Trek Next Generation sort of in the moment, whatever episode happened to be on TV.
As most people do.
So I don't really know how the overall arc ended. I don't know if they ever made it to Earth again. And then there were movies that came after the series. So everything.
Are we talking Next Generation or one of the other Star Trek series?
I was originally talking about Next Generation.
Okay.
Because they got screwed up and were trying to find Earth again at some point, right? Is that how the series starts? It's been so long.
I can get into this if you'd like.
Please do.
Okay.
This is suddenly going to be a very long podcast.
I'll try and keep it short.
Okay, and I don't mind too many spoilers on the Star Trek Next Generation stuff.
In regards to the Next Generation, that really was the Next Generation of like the original series in that there were a lot of one-off episodes. There were no overriding story arcs throughout the seasons. Some seasons are better than others, just for various reasons, directors and writers and all that.
But wasn't the only thread? We have to go find Earth again?
That is the main imperative of Star Trek Voyager, which was the 4th series in the Star Trek chronology. When released, it gets complicated because time travel. The Next Generation was with Picard as the captain in the Enterprise. They did shenanigans, and it really centered. It began with Q, the omnipotent god.
Yeah.
Depends on how well it's done. If there are ways that you can easily interpret the ending one way or another, then I think it's okay. But if no one really knows what's going on, I feel like it could be done better. Or at least that's what I would think if I were to read something like that. I feel like that would fall under horror or psychological stories primarily.
Shocking that I would bring it up then. Trying to think of.
I can think of a manga that I read that felt like it had unresolved plots that annoyed me. But then they kind of, I think they made a continuation series that might have summed it up that I haven't read yet, so.
I was just mainly intrigued because this trilogy that I finished had a lot of really good subplots to it, but they didn't really get resolved. Stuff like, oh, this character seems to be relatively unkillable because they're the descendant of someone very powerful, blah-de-blah. But then the character literally is unkillable. Someone throws a knife at him, and the knife goes through him. And it's never explained.
Oh.
There are ways you could think about how it was solved, but it's never clearly said. Which is disappointing. Because normally if you throw a knife at someone and it goes through them, that's something worth talking about.
Do you extend the hatred of open-ending or currently unresolved subplots in the TV world as well? Because I feel like that in and of itself drives most shows, is having overlapping unresolved subplots that bring people back.
That's more acceptable because it's implied that they will eventually be resolved, so long as the television show is not canceled prematurely. Fox. Or UPN, back when it was around, really.
I feel like that would only apply when you get to the series finale and you're still going, but wait, what about this?
Sliders.
Oh, yes.
And it kind of ended with Q. So with that series, they actually got somewhat of a resolution. And then Deep Space Nine came around because people still love Star Trek and they wanted a franchise out of it, which was set on a space station in the Bajoran space, I believe. after it got taken from Cardassia. That was an entirely different series within itself, which did have season-long story arcs, and is my personal favorite series. I'm not going to get too much into that because I really could. But after that was Voyager, where it got tossed all the way into the Delta Quadrant. And everything else is in the Alpha Quadrant. So they spent like 9 seasons trying to get back home, which has its own resolution in the last episode, which some people like, some people got very angry about because time travel. No, go ahead.
Wasn't there, I remember a thread about Picard wanting to go back home, and then there's this episode where he thinks he's back home, but it's actually some weird dream, horrible sequence. This might have been from the movies and not the show.
It wouldn't surprise me if there were a couple episodes where Picard did do that for one reason or another. There's also the movie Generations, where he gets into the Nexus, where it's like not really heaven, more like limbo, and he wants to escape it to defeat some evil dude who's going to burn up a sun and kill all his people on a planet and various other reasons.
Yeah, the best movie of the series, I agree.
It is one of my favorite because you also see the entire destruction of the Enterprise D, which was very respectably done back in the time for their special effects. And you also got to hear Data swear, which is pretty rare. There's a 5th series, which chronologically in the Star Trek verse predates all of it, called Enterprise, with Scott Bakula.
Yes.
So that one is unique for most viewers and fans for various reasons, but that deals with a lot of time travel. And there was a point where they went back in time.
Firefly?
Wait, I haven't finished the Slider series. Did they also leave it very open-ended? Because now I'm upset, because I've been watching them.
Where are you in the Slider series?
None of the main characters have left yet, so I'm still pretty early on. I'm aware that almost everyone leaves before the end of the series.
Has a significant event happened to the Professor yet?
No, I heard that happens, and that's
Okay.
that has not happened yet.
Then you are pretty early on.
Yes. I think I'm only 2 seasons in.
Yeah, and there's like 8 or 9.
Yeah.
I want to say. Yeah.
I'm aware bad things happen, but I thought maybe they'd all be resolved, like not open-ended.
No.
Oh no.
The final episode, I won't spoil anything for you, I'll be good about that.
All right.
The final episode has one very clearly unresolved issue between the main character and where he is at that point. You get no resolution that I've seen. Maybe I misinterpreted. And a multi-seasonal story arc is left open-ended. You don't...
Oh.
I don't see how it ends. They might have done something since then that I just haven't seen. I don't know. But back in the day, I was very upset when I saw that ending.
Well, I'm looking forward to being miserable very eventually.
I'm hoping that series like that pulled something like what Farscape did, where the series finale drove everyone nuts because it became open-ended at the very last 30 seconds of the series because 2 characters died after saving the universe and all that stuff. They just got disintegrated in a boat. But then they did a miniseries to follow up all the various little plot points left over a couple of years later.
I feel like there's a lot of shows that I tell people, stop watching after this episode because this is a perfectly fine ending. Do not, under any circumstance, keep watching. The last season of Scrubs comes to mind. Although that wasn't really a loose ending situation. That was sort of a, dear God, why?
Good evening, ladies, menfolk, and non-binary viewers, to episode 86 of Word Ninjas Live. I am your host, Charles, your weekly instigator of literary and creative productivity and insanity, a little bit of everything. Joining me tonight are Will,
Hello.
Justin,
Indeed.
and Calvin.
Mm-hmm.
Unlike last week, we're actually going to talk about literary things. We've had our week of fun. It's time to get back into it. And starting things off this week is the talkie point. Are there series or standalone novels that have too much unresolved plot points? Or too many? How do you handle all your plot threads when writing? I brought this one up because I finished the trilogy from Laini Taylor, which is A Daughter of Smoke and Bone. I forget the second one, and then A Dream of God and Monsters. And so many plot points that have been left unresolved. I want resolution, damn it. But then I thought of all the various subplots that I do in my own stories. At least I have the excuse of not having finished any of my stories yet. But I was kind of curious how other people handle them in their own writing, or how they've seen them in other works. Are subplots generally taken care of in things that you have read, or are there some questions left unanswered?
Most of the ones I've read have been pretty good at summing up plots, and when they don't, it's only because there's more to come. So I guess maybe I've been lucky with that when it comes to reading. I can't think of anything that had subplots that were unresolved.
What about open-ended interpretations of the endings? Is that considered an untied subplot?